Hey Rich Girls, Kirby here, and today we are going over updates to the Child and Dependent Care Tax Credit for 2025. This is Rich Girl's Guide, where we demystify the world of personal finance to help you create a financially successful and fulfilling life. I'm Kirby, a former wealth management 9-to-5er, and today I wanted to update an old episode that has been recently gaining a lot of attention. So as we gear up towards tax season, I will be sharing a lot of tax tips and tricks, so be sure to subscribe to Rich Girl's Guide so you don't miss out on any information. In today's episode, I am going to be focusing on figures for the 2024 tax year, since that is what most of us are probably working on right now. However, there is a lot of chatter going on about big potential changes under the Trump administration for 2025 and beyond. So we'll go over that near the end of today's episode. Let's start with the basics. What is the difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit? A deduction just means you get to deduct a certain amount of money from your taxable income. A tax credit, on the other hand, is actual money either taken off your tax bill or money added to your refund. For the most part, you will always want a tax credit over a deduction. Today, we're focusing on two different tax credits, the child tax credit and the dependent care tax credit. Both of these are credits, which means these figures are hard dollar amounts either taken off your final tax bill or added to your refund. Anyone with kids under the age of 18 are able to claim them as a dependent on their tax return. Now, there are quite a few requirements to be able to claim a child as a dependent, so if you are unsure whether or not you can claim your child as a dependent, I'll leave a link to the IRS website below that you can check out. Now, these tax credits can be a huge bonus come tax time. For 2024, the maximum credit you can receive per child is $2,000. That means if your tax bill is $3,000, you get to subtract $2,000, and now your taxable bill is only $1,000. Now, if you do not owe any taxes, meaning you did not work, have earned income, or the standard deduction wipes out your taxable income, then you will be eligible for the $1,700 refundable tax credit. The standard deduction for 2024 is $29,200 for joint tax filers and $14,600 for single tax filers. The second tax credit you may be eligible for is the dependent care tax credit. Now, this generally only applies to minors that are under the age of 13 who need to have daycare, before or after school care, or even summer camps due to parents working. Now, a lot of parents forget about this last part, myself included, but daytime summer camps can also count towards this credit. If you enroll your second grader in a 9-to-5 week-long camp so that you can go to work, that can be counted as dependent care expenses. For most parents, this would be your typical daycare before kids reach school age, and then before and after care once they actually start attending school. There are some exceptions here, so again, I'll list a link below that goes over all of those caveats for your viewing pleasure. Now, this tax credit can get a bit complicated, but essentially you, the parent, can get reimbursed a small amount of your daycare expenses in the form of a tax credit. Now, this credit really irks me because it is completely non-refundable. If you do not owe any tax this year because of low income, you completely lose out on this credit. I could go off on a rant on how this is essentially a tax on the poor, but I really don't have the energy to do that today. I'll start with the most generous example. If you are a single parent and your taxable income after the standard deduction is $15,000, you have 2 children and spent at least $6,000 on daycare expenses, then you can claim a credit of 35% of that $6,000 of expenses. That equals $2,100, which is, as far as I know, the largest amount that you can get back under this dependent care tax credit. Now there is a phase out range that I will link, but essentially once you start making more than $43,000 per year, that 35% payout drops down to 20%. The least generous example would be parents who make over $43,000 collectively, have one child, and have at least $3,000 in childcare expenses. They will receive 20% of that $3,000 in the form of a credit, which equals $600. So while this can be a huge help come tax time, it's really just a drop in the bucket when it comes to daycare and childcare expenses. But we're gonna take what we can get. Now, before you get started on your taxes, be sure to request an itemized receipt from your child care center, because even if you spent more than $3,000 per child, you will still need the exact dollar amount and receipt from the child care center to keep with your taxes. By the way, just to add some perspective, here is a snippet from an article posted on the Department of Labor website. Quote, U.S. families spend between 8.9% and 16% of their median income on full day care for just one child, with annual prices ranging from $6,552 to $15,600 in 2022, the most recent year for which data is available. Even part day care for school-age children comprises 8.1 to 9.4% of median family income, from $5,943 up to $9,211 for just one child. To put this into perspective, the median cost of a year's worth of rent was $15,216 in 2022. End quote. Yikes. Now let's discuss the potential updates to these tax credits for 2025 and beyond. Now, as of today, which is January 24th, all of the figures I just gave you will still be in effect in the year 2025. So a $2,000 child tax credit, $1,700 refundable child tax credit, and even the same income thresholds of $400,000 for married couples and $200,000 for all other filers. However, starting in 2026, the following years, those numbers are all set to decrease. The tax credit will be reduced to $1,000 per child, and the income limits will decrease to $110,000 for married couples and $75,000 for all other filers. Seeing that Trump actually increased these credits amounts back in 2017 through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I highly doubt that he would allow the deadline to pass without extending it or even putting a new law in place that would keep the increased $2,000 tax credit in place. But only time will tell, and you better believe I'll let you know as soon as anything changes. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to rate and review this podcast wherever you listen and subscribe to Rich Girls Guide on YouTube. I'll have a brand new episode out for you next Monday. Till then, have an incredible and productive week. Later, Rich Girls.